Helen Mcentee, the Minister of Justice in Ireland. I've been looking into her and I've came across an article by Gript Media that's very, very worrying. If this article was written about any other politician in any other place in Western society, it would be a news story that would not go away. Now, what I'm going to state here is that just because we find a conflict of interest doesn't mean that there's any dodgy goings on. I really need to state that. You get conflicts of interest in all walks of life. It doesn't mean that there's corruption. Sometimes a conflict of interest cannot be avoided. But I want you to make your mind up on this, and I want you to see this again. I'm sure you've read this. Maybe some of you haven't read this, but I want you to make your mind up on this. I'm not going to give you my personal opinion. I'm going to present you with what's already out in the public domain. And if you know about it, let me know in the comment section what you think. And if you don't know about it, I still want to know what you think. Maybe you're shocked by this. So let's get into the article now. But first off, guys, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and share. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment in the comment section, as I said. And if you're watching on any other platform like Rumble or X, give it a rumble, give it a heart, leave a comment, and share or retweet. The double standard around Helen Mcentee's husband. Some weeks ago, followers of the Irish News might recall the Fianna Fáil TD Niall Collins was at the centre of a national controversy. Calls for his resignation as a junior minister came in from all directions when it emerged that over a decade ago, he had voted as a county councillor in favour of selling land, which was later purchased by his wife. To his critics, this was evidence of a tremendous conflict of interest on the basis that his wife stood to materially and financially benefit from one of his decisions as a public representative. So serious conflicts of interest can happen in the political class. There is, needless to say, much less interest in the situation surrounding the hate speech bill and the husband of the Minister for Justice, Helen Mcentee. The minister's husband, Paul Hickey, is a senior executive at the pharmaceutical firm AbbVie, where he serves as a director of market access. AbbVie is one of the world's largest manufacturers of so-called puberty blockers, drugs which are used to slow or stop the sexual development of children who are being transitioned from one gender to another. AbbVie's drug Lupron, which was originally designed to treat prostate cancer, but which is also used as a puberty blocker, had $892 million worth of sales in 2019. Though it is hard to say exactly how much of this revenue was derived from its use in suppressing puberty in transgender children. AbbVie is, however, being investigated by the state of Texas for its role in manufacturing and promoting these drugs, which some argue are highly damaging to vulnerable children. So that is an extreme conflict of interest. There is a financial gain that her husband would be making if these hate speech laws were properly activated. Because if I came out and said, well, hold on, what this is doing to the children is bad, just something simple like that, that could be me sort of seen as attacking protected characteristics, but I'm just calling out maybe the drugs being bad for these kids. And at the same time, her husband is financially gaining from this. So suppression of the information put down as hate speech, while the husbands and relatives and whoever else is involved in this makes bank. AbbVie is a company, in other words, which stands to lose out in the event that countries ban the use of puberty blockers in children, as has recently happened in the UK and as is happening in many US states. However, for such ban to happen here, there would first have to be a debate, and the law being enacted by Minister Mcentee will certainly have, and one could argue is explicitly intended to have, a chilling effect on that debate, making, as it does, gender identity a protected characteristic which it may be hateful to criticize. Her husband is financially gaining from this, while she also has the power to suppress the speech over this. I would say that is not just a mild conflict of interest. I would say that is extreme conflict of interest. But that's just me. One user said, question, is it a coincidence that Helen Mcentee is bringing in legislation that criminalizes disagreement with trans ideologies and sneaks in a new definition of gender while her husband, Paul Hickey, is Director of Market Access and Stakeholder Relations for pharma giant AbbVie? It is not hard to make an argument that the minister has a direct conflict of interest of the same nature as that which plagued her colleague Niall Collins. Her husband is not merely a run-of-the-mill employee at AbbVie. His job is to increase market access for its drugs and products. In an Ireland where people feel afraid to criticise the provision of puberty blockers to children on foot of a state hate speech bill, his company clearly stands to gain if the freezing of debate avoids restrictions being put in place which would make AbbVie drugs harder to access. It should also be noted, for the sake of fairness, that a conflict of interest by itself is not disqualifying. Conflicts of interest in life are almost impossible to avoid. What should happen when they inevitably arise is that they are openly declared. Just today, for an example, yours truly had to declare a conflict of interest in another article on gript.ie. And a very good point brought up by Grip Media. We can't avoid conflicts of interest, but for us to be able to trust the politicians, you would like to think that they would come out with this and say, well, look, my husband does work for this pharmaceutical company, but this isn't going to have a reflection on my decisions moving forward. That didn't happen at all. The minister can take comfort, however, from the fact it is a racing certainty that this will not become an issue for her. In the first instance, the media are by and large already entirely on side with the idea of providing gender-affirming care to those who demand it, regardless of age. Second, the media have what one might term a presumption of scurrilousness against those who raise questions of this nature against people who share their broad status in the world. The husband of an eminent politician will always get the benefit of the doubt against some heretic on social media who doesn't share the same broad set of values as they do. There will always be a presumption that any question or an attempt at a smear or are scurrilous allegations. Third, there is a deep reluctance in the Irish establishment to ask almost any awkward question of pharmaceutical companies because of the employment they provide in the first instance, and the moral fear of sounding as if one might have anti-vaccine sympathies in the second instance. If you want a classic example of a question that might be considered disreputable to ask, then this one about the minister's husband and any conflict of interest is almost a perfect example. So basically, in roundabout words, they find asking these types of questions cringe. And that is worrying for me because everything should be open to scrutiny. No questions should be off the table. And if this is the way the establishment feels, the political establishment feels about pharmaceutical companies, then that's far more than a conflict of interest. That's basically full ownership of the government. Defenders of the minister will note, of course, that it was not she who initiated the hate speech legislation. The proposed laws began its life under the reign of Charlie Flanagan as Minister for Justice. Ironically now, one of the few politicians known to harbour concerns about gender ideology. However, the specific addition of gender as a protected characteristic came when Mcentee was minister, which sort of nullifies that defence. So once again, you have to really ask the question, if that new broad term and the protected characteristics that have came in, did that come in directly under Helen Mcentee? And for what reason? Was it for the greater good of children and to protect trans children? Or was it to help her husband financially gain and help him with his career. There is also, some will argue, a difference between the directness of the conflict in the Collins case and this one. Collins voted to directly sell land that is alleged he knew his wife was interested in buying. In the case of the minister and her husband, the conflict of interest is less direct. One has to construct an argument for how his employer might benefit from the law that is not immediately intuitive to the average person. But the difference in directness is arguably counterbalanced by the difference in scale. There's a big difference between the value of a parcel of land in Limerick and the potential value of AbbVie, of years and years of sales of a controversial drug. So I like what Grip Media have done there. They have compared the two cases. Yes, you can't compare the conflict of interest between Mcentee and her husband and the pharmaceutical company to, a local representative, possibly, allegedly, freeing up land for his wife to buy. They're two separate things. But to stay on Mcentee here, for me personally, I would like to see her own people call her out and her own people say, well, hold on, we wouldn't allow this in any other sector. So why are we even allowing this here? That basis alone, the fact that the certain protected characteristics came under Mcentee and when she came in, is a worrying sign. Was that brought in to help her husband financially gain and other people financially gain? Or was there multiple nefarious reasons for this? Or maybe there was no nefarious reason for this whatsoever, and Mcentee just said to herself, well, we need to protect trans kids more and give them this medication that suppresses puberty. I'm going to have to leave that up to yourselves to figure out. One thing's for sure, we really need to kick out conflicts of interest, especially at the political class. If there's anything whatsoever to do with a conflict of interest, I would say that person shouldn't have a say, regardless if it's their job. I don't even care if it's the Taoiseach. If there's a conflict of interest that could have a direct impact on children's lives or the populace of Ireland, that person or multiple of people can't vote or legislate anything unless it's away from the conflict of interest. And I think that's actually understandable. The fact that Grip Media and other news organizations had to dig to get this and she didn't come forward herself is an indication to me. I'm not saying it's true, but personal to myself, there is a little bit more of a nefarious reason and probably, financial gains. But I can't say if that's true or not. That's the end of the video, guys. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I want to know your opinions in the comment section. And if you're watching any other platform like Rumble or X, give it a heart, give it a rumble, leave a comment and share. I want to know your opinions about this. I mean, for me personally, I would definitely bring in not these protected characteristics. I would abolish all this hate speech stuff. I think there is a push for that now to abolish this hate speech bill. It needs to be abolished because, it wasn't voted on. These people nobody wants this. This is just what it looks like here is protecting the political class and certain people. So yeah, guys, that's it. Thank you very much for tuning in. Peace.